am live. I am reading out of Eyes of HORUS. It's another of Joan Marshal Grants' Far Memory books. She wrote 7 books of her own reincarnations, and she passed away in 1989. This book is about Ra-Up. She is Ra-Up, son of priestess of Ra, and an heir to the Nomarch of the Oryx. This is Egypt, and it plays 2,000 years after the Winged Pharaoh, which was her first book. And I stopped here because it was a very long chapter, the second chapter. So I stopped halfway, and I'm going to continue now, part 2 of the story of OYAHBE, Ra-Up's mother. We had been 2 days under the protection of the Oryx when your mother had the dream which changed the course of our lives. I remember there was a full moon, and we were sleeping on the edge of a bean field. In her dream, she saw a child, a boy of about 5 years, lying in some reeds near the bank of the river. She saw he was hidden from anyone going down the path which led from the track between the village we had just passed and the town we could see in the distance. And though he had cried out, no one had heard him. She saw he had a broken leg, so she comforted him and told him to lie quiet until she came to take him home. He said he lived in a white house standing away from the others, and that his father was the overseer of 3 villages. Dawn was touching the eastern cliffs when OYAHBE woke. She told me her dream and said we must hurry to find the child. I followed her down the dusty road, and as she searched for the track she knew would turn off towards the river. At last she found it, though it was almost hidden by standing corn. We thrust through high reeds fringing the river until we came to a small clearing, where a sleeping child lay with his leg twisted under him. He whimpered as I picked him up, and when he saw OYAHBE bending over him, he patted her cheek and smiled, saying, "You will take me back to my father as you promised?" I called and called, but nobody heard me, except you. The child's father, whose name was Benoit, was so overjoyed to see his son that instead of treating us as outcasts, he himself served us food and wine. He asked how we had found the boy, and OYAHBE said she had heard him calling and gone to help him. We might have left the house and gone on our way, had not the boy's nurse come to tell us that he cried for OYAHBE. The woman stared at her, and then said deliberately, "He says he did not call out to you. He prayed to Ra, as I had taught him, and then he saw you in a dream, and you promised to come to find him. He said he told you exactly where he was lying, even how the path turns off through the cornfield, and that he was hidden by the reeds. I should not have believed him unless I knew he often had strange dreams. Is it true, what he says?" "Yes," said OYAHBE, "it is quite true." The woman nodded, neither disbelieving nor surprised, and said, "As soon as I saw you, I knew he had a true dream. Then Benoit said we must remain as his guests, and I knew he would have accepted us without question, even if I had not told him our story. He asked by what road we had come from the north, and then inquired earnestly if we had been better treated since we had entered the nome of the Oryx. When I answered that we had both noticed at once that the people were most kindly than any we had met before, I could see he was well pleased and satisfied. Then he told OYAHBE that a room had been prepared for her, and in it she would find fresh clothes and other things she might need. Turning to me, he said, "Our priests wear a yellow robe, and I will have one ready for you by sunset." He paused. "But I go too fast. I'm making plans before asking if you both wish to stay here, to live within the Oryx. There's work here for both of you, and we shall be grateful for your help, for the help that you can give us." I answered, We came as outcasts, and you have treated us as honored guests. Our work was taken away, and you have given it back. Do you need to ask if we will accept so great a gift? Tomorrow I will take you to the Nomad. Though he is still young, he is wise, as was his father before him. He does not himself wear the golden sandals, but he knows how to lead men to their happiness. He knows his nome, as an ordinary man knows his garden, and all who dwell therein are his kinsmen. His father and his grandfather were great scholars. In the great house there is a room of hundreds of papyri. Some of them I have seen, old, so very old, yet though the colour of the writing signs may fade, the truth is brilliant as the day when it was scribed. He says I should not honour him for ruling as he does, because he only follows the pattern of the old laws. When I was a little boy, his father told me, it was after I had heard for the first time the reading of the laws, "You have heard a lot of long, solemn words today, Benoit, but these are all you need to remember, for their magic is as strong as all the rest put together. Sow the seed you wish to harvest, and remember that he who sows love reaps joy." When on the next day we approached the entrance pylon of the house of Nomak, I expected that soon we should see a man seated in audience, legendary as an ancient pharaoh. Crossing a wide forecourt we followed Benoit up 7 shallow steps into a hall, whose high roof was supported by a double row of square pillars. He looked into a room which opened off it. This was empty, but before he turned back, I saw that the walls were lined with shelves, and on a long table were the reeds and palette of a scribe. Beyond the hall there was another doorway, closed by a blue curtain. Benoit held it aside for us to pass through into a walled garden, which was a formal design with trimmed acacia trees at the 4 corners of a fish pool. The garden also was deserted, and we crossed it to an opening in the wall on the far side. Now we were in a vineyard, bordered by narrow water channels. From the fields beyond, the scent of flowering beans joined with the warmth of ripening grapes. A man wearing only a loincloth was working among the vines. He seemed much younger than I, not more than 30, perhaps less. The sun had burnished his skin to the likeness of carnelian, and there was a sheen of the same warm colour in his dark hair. Benoit gave him the greeting between kinsmen, and then told him our name. When OYAHBE returned his greeting, there was a tone in her voice I had not heard before. Once I had heard a child speak like a priest, and now the priest spoke as a woman. I wondered if the man was the overseer of the vineyard. I knew OYAHBE was lonely, and sometimes, when I felt the weight of my years, I dreaded the death that would leave her without my protection. It would be well if she found a husband who belonged to her heart. The man said he had done enough work for the day, and led us to a stone bench, shaded by vines which had been trained over wooden bars jutting out from the mud wall. He sat between her and Benoit, and while he listened to our story, which he had asked her to tell, he seemed to forget the two of them were not alone. Again I wondered who he was. If he were only a gardener, his wife would have to work hard, and it's not good for the memory of the days too full of things which clamour to be done. Then I thought of how he said he had done enough work. Surely he would only have said that if he had been the overseer. Then I thought he must have even wider authority, for when OYAHBE had finished telling him all that has befallen us, he told Benoit to take me to the wine store to try the first jar of the vintage pressed 5 years ago, which had been opened that morning. I glanced back before following Benoit through the square archway which led towards the house, and from the way they were looking at each other, I knew I was content to leave the two of them together, even if he was only a gardener. The wine was better than any I had drunk before, and until Benoit had finished praising it, I forgot to ask the name of the man with whom I had left OYAHBE. Nektra stopped talking. I saw there were tears in his eyes, and I slipped my hand into his. I waited for a long time, but he still didn't speak. So I asked, "What was the name of the man? You never told me. You stopped just when Benoit was going to tell you." He put his arm around me and drew me close to him. His name? Do you need to be told your father's name, little Ra'ab? I realized I had been very stupid not to have understood before, though I was still puzzled. But you said the man in the vineyard was much younger than you, more than 20 years younger, and my father is an old man, as old as you are. Then I thought I might have hurt him, so I said, not that you're really old, dear Nektra. But Nektra did not seem to be offended, though his voice was sad. So Khnumhotep seems old to you? Yes, a child must see him like that. To me he is still a young man, so alive with the happiness of your mother. But of course he must seem old now. A man is as young as his heart, and his was buried in her tomb, to live with hers beyond the sunset. To live with hers beyond the sunset. So, that was the second chapter, and I finished this here. The third chapter is Poyok, the wild cat. I have a new wild cat.